actually getting old, right? And so this beautiful morning, I don't like to call it old age. I wanted to say old age in men, but I'm trying not to use that word so it doesn't sound like old age. So we're talking about senior citizens, which might cover both men and women, but we're focusing on men this time. And so I have my guest with me. You can already see from his he's well representing, you know, those who are above 40. Yes, let's just put it that way. So I want to say
why are you being polite and nice? I'm not above 40.
No, I say
I'm above 50.
Okay.
And probably above 60.
You don't, you see, I didn't see anything. It's so great to have you, Mr. Rashidi Onyagi.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you.
Thank you.
You know, you wear so many hats, you know, you are a lot of things, but for this show, you are a senior citizen.
A junior senior citizen.
A junior senior citizen. Okay.
Yes. Because the law says when you are 60, you're a senior citizen.
Okay.
If you are just 60, you're a junior senior citizen.
Oh, really? Is that in the Constitution of the 1999?
No. It's just a way of coping with suddenly realizing that, hey, I've lived longer than I will actually live. Again, that can be quite shocking to a lot of people when you wake up one day and say, wait a minute, it's all about life expectancy. Everybody wants to live. In fact, nobody wants to die at all. But then we have this sense of averaging our age that, okay, I haven't seen anybody living beyond 100 so far. So we typically give ourselves 100 years to live. And then when you see that, okay, I'm over 60, that means if I'm to live to 100 years, I have just 40. I've lived longer than I will live. And that kind of has a sobering effect on a lot of people. It can be a depressing effect because you now start to reminisce and say, okay, what are my achievements? What are this? What are that? You know, and that's why most cases of depression is people who are above 50 mostly, especially in men. You know, because society puts a lot of expectations on them, this whole expectation of masculinity, you know, and being manly, you know, is especially important to men in our culture. So you cannot be seen to express weakness. So, but the body, this is a biological process. Aging is a biological process primarily. You know, once you're over 40, as a man, your testosterone levels begin to decline every year. That leads to loss of energy, loss of virility, you know, and a lot of other conditions, prostrate, you know, a lot of other conditions that are associated with advancing age start to crop in. Hypertension, diabetes, and all this stuff. So older men has a lot to cope with, and typically the way they cope with it depends on the pressures that society actually puts on them. And this whole idea about you have to be manly, you have to be this, you have to, and then you see a situation where even to seek help is extremely, most men are reluctant to go to the hospital and say, okay, I'm having prostate issues, you know, which is normal for their age, you know, but to go there, then they will start seeking all kinds of herbal remedies, which sometimes compounds the situation.
Okay, so having established that, we're now switching over from being a senior citizen to aging in men.
Okay.
And how to cope. So coping mechanism. Because a lot of, I know, right? Which is the angle we want to actually focus in this conversation. Because a lot of men, like you said in your opening, you just feel like, how did I get to this age? And so when you're taunting a woman for being 40 and 50, especially if she's not married or thereabout, you forget that you yourself, you're not getting younger anytime soon. So you see this whole thing where they'll say midlife crisis. At what point does midlife crisis happen for a man?
Honestly, I don't know.
You haven't experienced it?
I don't see. It's a question of perception. There are many people have definitions for midlife crisis. I've been reading about it since I was 20.
Wow.
So I know one day I'm going to slide into that mode. But when you mention crisis, it usually indicates conflicts, struggle, with self-perception and all. Mm-hmm. And some men don't even have that. I don't think I have, because first, I'm too busy. I try to live as healthy a life as I can. Mm-hmm. So I don't feel that pressure of being sick. In fact, I could say I'm hardly ever sick, because ever since I was in my 20s, I've adopted a healthy lifestyle with regards to what I eat and what I take. And though I've been drinking coffee virtually all my life, but I've also been taking vitamins virtually all my life. I discovered that very early. So, and I've been consistent at this. And I never ignore something that has to do with my health. I try to exercise as much as I can. But what I do consistently is walk, when I can. When the distance is less than a kilometer from where I am and I need to go, I will walk, because that is very, very important. That's where I wear a digital watch, so I measure, I set goals, health goals. But most men, especially in Nigeria, and by the way, the total population that is over 60 in Nigeria is less than 10%.
How about over 50?
Over 50. There may be a little more. But Nigeria has a very youthful population, And out of that 10%, women actually constitute about 4%, with men taking the rest of it. So we don't have an old age problem in Nigeria yet. As the year goes on, the youthful population we are so proud of now will begin to age. And then that is when government policy, government health policies and all this rest, we have to focus on providing health care for the aged, for the elderly. Right now, with less than 10% of the population over 60, we really don't have a big problem dealing with our elderly population. It will happen eventually, but as like you asked, what does midlife crisis look like? You can enter midlife crisis in your 30s, can be in your 40s. In fact, the point where you start to feel a sense of aging is after you turn 40, and this applies as much to men as it is to women. For women, childbirth becomes a bit more difficult after you are 40, 45. I'm not a doctor, but that's the general belief.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the time you are 50, you're actually approaching age of menopause. Some women enter menopause early, and some much later. So you could still see a 60-year-old woman having children. But as women age, childbirth tends to become a bit more problematic, because as you age, all your your hormones hormone production begins to decline, and especially in men. So
I like the part where you say
especially in men, yes.
Good, let's focus on them now. Because you see, this is a very serious concern, and it's not talked about a lot.
Yes.
So a lot of men don't think that after a certain age, they begin to decline.
Yes.
Even when there are researches out there,
yes,
that a man declines after a certain age, and they begin to make examples. I won't want to call his name. They'll say, oh, look at this man. Despite his age, he's still producing children. Oh, look at this man. Oh, my great-grandfather, after this age, he's still reproducing. But this is just a few of these men.
No, most men can reproduce right up to the age of 70.
Okay.
There's no problem with that.
Is there no problem with that?
Well, unless your testosterone level gets so low that you cannot do the needful. Okay. However, there are medications to mitigate erectile dysfunction, okay, which is quite important. And most men will experience a lowering of erectile functions as their age progresses. If you don't use anything and your testosterone level begins to decline, you will experience this. There are other factors. I keep saying I'm not a doctor, and I'm speaking now from experience. You know, it's nothing to be ashamed about, because it's an age thing. It's not because you are not doing something right or anything like that. Even the frequency of sexual encounters will reduce, you know, because libido just drops like you can supplement by taking drugs to, but that has its own side effects, because basically it's not advisable to use
these drugs.
They become, I call them lifestyle drugs, because basically, if at my age you go celibate, I mean, nothing will happen to you. Okay. You know, I'm even considering becoming a monk. Okay. No, really. If the problem with most men is that society puts a pressure on them to continue to exhibit certain traits that are associated mainly with younger men. And so they go out of their way to try and find ways to continue to be manly, to be strong, men who have never visited the gym, once they are 50 and they know that things are going downhill, they begin to hit the gym. That's when you start to build biceps. And
your 50s.
Yes, there are people who can do that, because there's a gradual loss of muscle mass when you reach that age. And if you don't do anything to slow it down, basically you begin to have ambulatory problems. That is difficulty in walking. You begin to stagger. That's why most men begin to use a walking stick. Okay. Because they've lost that capacity in their muscles. There are ways to mitigate this, but there is no way to stop it. Age will take its course. There's no way you can stop aging. Okay. You see all sorts of remedies that is supposed to slow aging. The most important thing, the most vital thing for men, even for people over 60, is not to lose mental capacity. That is when you are likely to have Parkinson's, Alzheimer's disease, and all that. Where cognitive decline sets in, you remember less. Your speech slows slightly, and a lot of other things begin to show up that wasn't there when you were younger, and they weren't supposed to be there anyway. So these are all signs of aging, and we don't yet have a well-articulated policy for dealing with this. I don't know much about government policy, but I know they have this, is it Ministry for some, I think it's an institution for over 60s that was actually...
Is it functioning?
Eh?
Is it functioning? Because in Nigeria, where we are still trying to cope with paying people their pension and gratuity.
As the population of elderly rises, government will have to contend with providing for them. Lagos, I know, has a well-defined policy for dealing with the aged. They have old people's homes, which is, some people say, is kind of alien to our culture.
Why is that?
because we have a very closely knit family structure where the younger ones take care of the older ones. But that family structure is beginning to atomize gradually, with sons and daughters not wanting to take care of their parents, because either they are too busy making money, or they simply weren't brought up to believe that it is an important part of their responsibility as children to show their parents, to take care of their parents during old age. That is not changing as rapidly as one will expect, but it is changing. So much so that most elderly persons find themselves ultimately alone during their old age with no one to take care of them. And that exposes them to a lot of danger. People might take advantage of their weakness, maltreat them, steal their money, and this is typically an age where you actually need to be close to people the most. Not so much because you are old, but because you feel you have given all you can to life. You've done your best,
just need to rest.
And you believe that this is the time for, for your children to take care of you.
Okay, and this is the part where you see people saying, okay, you have to live a good life as a man. But let's look at this other side. Some persons say, assume, and claim that women have it easier when it comes to getting old than men. For example, the woman, maybe the kids are grown, the lady gets married, and she gives birth and she wants to go for a mugo. It's definitely going to be her mom who's going to go for a mugo. And in that period, the man is just left alone, in the house. And so a lot of people believe that men are mostly at a disadvantage point when they are getting old, because most kids want to tilt to their mothers instead of the fathers, and nobody gets to get concerned with what the father is doing all this time when he's alone, if he feels lonely at any point, or if there is some health issues going on with him, or some sort of things. Do you think that men are at the disadvantage point after giving their life?
I wouldn't say that. Children generally tend to prefer the grandmother or the
I loved
mother.
my grandfather.
Yes, one of my most favorite persons when I was growing up was my grandfather. In fact, he spoiled myself and my sister rotten. There's nothing he won't give to us when we go to his house to spend our holidays. The same applies to my grandmother on my mother's side, and I never met my grandfather, but I met my grandmother on my father's side, and she's quite a nice disciplinarian too. But we missed her when she actually died. But I wouldn't say men are at a disadvantage. Men generally are not as close to their children as women. Though you see all these videos of fathers playing with their daughters. I mean, daughters generally tend to gravitate towards their father. But as you grow older, and if you are growing together, especially couples who age together, some couples are not, the husband is not much older than the wife. So for men who are much older than their wives, they find it easier because there's always somewhere to take care of them when they are growing old. For couples whose age are much closer, they are aging together, they both have to cope together. Grandchildren can have a therapeutic effect during old age. That is if the children were actually brought up to allow their children to relate with their grandparents. Most of us grew up around our grandparents, but in the modern context, couples want to be with their children more, and they tend to isolate them from the grandparents when they are growing up. But the strangest thing is that children tends to get better treatment from their grandparents because they come with a greater degree of understanding, not just understanding children, they have a sense of how the generations grew. So a grandparent will be able to point out to you that you are just like your father. They have a lot of stories to tell.
And so they're able to manage the grandchildren more.
And those stories actually relate to the parents, okay? And they will tell the children about their parents far better than their parents can explain themselves to their children.
Yes.
So children tend to want to find out more about their parents from their grandparents. What's daddy like when he was growing up? You know, don't worry, your daddy is even worse than you. And no father likes to hear that.
Yes.
You know, so, and because women live relatively longer than men, yes, the life expectancy of women is quite much higher than that of men. You know, the life expectancy of a Nigerian man is between 55 and 60. The last time I checked. For the women, it's about 60 to 63. You know, so...
despite all the stress you men put these women through?
Women are built stronger. No, seriously.
So they say.
They carry, they boy children, they do the houseworks, they are active in the other room, you know. And generally, they tend to get more work done than men. Men just see themselves as, okay, let me just go and work and provide for my children and family and all that. You know, you hardly find them in the kitchen, you hardly find them sweeping and everything. All these works are actually some forms of exercise which gives women greater health balance than men as they grow old, you know. And generally, like I said, women are built by nature itself, because the fact that they have to bear children, they tend to have a stronger build than men, and that's scientifically proven.
Of course. Now, while I agree with you, science has also proven that the fact that women bear children, you know, and all of that, it makes them older. So this entire processes, you know, reduces the energy of a woman and makes her older. And that's why you see that you see a woman who can be looking very, very young and fresh. The moment she gets pregnant and gives birth, it's like childbirth drops the youngness of a woman by a large margin. And that's why you see these days a lot of women don't want to get pregnant because they want to keep looking young and fresh.
That varies from women to women. I mean, I have seen women who are in their 60s and 70s looking just as good as young women. I can use my wife as an example.
Science would explain that and say that because these women, so it has been proven that when a woman gets pregnant way early, maybe you get pregnant in your 18, 19, 20, thereabout, there's a high tendency to still be able to maintain a certain level of youthfulness, and then coupled with good feeding, nutrition, good lifestyle, you can be able to balance. So I see most women trying to like hit the gym, trying to work on their body, trying to do body, all of those things.
Well, I saw a picture of Jennifer Lopez looking like she's a teenager.
Come on, you can't compare J-Lo. You know what the celebrities go through. Just even,
I was
exactly.
I was amazed to see
you cannot compare a J-Lo to an average African woman
days,
who has no technology or anything.
Even the younger generation are far more health conscious, and they care more about maintaining their looks, maintaining their bodily structure and bodily functions than our mothers and fathers.
Which makes them not want to get pregnant. You see that's a disadvantage. But let's move back to the men now. Let's leave the women.
All right.
So as a man, I'm not going to say you're an old man. As a man growing old daily, right? What do you think is the biggest regret of a man? Imagine a man wakes up and he has to regret anything in his 50s or 60s. What do you think that would be?
I wouldn't know. I wake up every day and look for something to do. I don't look back and say, oh, I wish I'd done this, I wish I'd done that, I wish I'd done that. You know, you have choices in life. And it's like quantum science. Once you take the law of uncertainty, once you make a choice, every consequence attached to that choice will actualize themselves, as opposed to if you make another choice. So you can't walk back in time and say, okay, let me make another choice. You can branch out on that path and modify your choices to get to where you're going. But I think regrets are for people who don't have confidence that they have done their best in life. If you feel that you could not have gone, things could not have gone any other way except the way they had gone, you can assess things that you did in the past, and if you have a chance to correct some of them, you will do so. I've seen men who didn't treat their wife properly when they were younger. They abandoned them, and when they saw like
life
during their old age, life is catching them. Okay, a case in point is the current issue of Ashake's dad. It's a typical example. When the guy was younger, he was playing the field, you know, ignoring his family.
But people say he
allegedly,
wasn't taking care of his family.
well, yes, but if he was, then he would have inculcated a certain value in his children and wife that wouldn't have turned this matter into a controversy. Why is it that in his old age, he's reaching out to his son, who is now a multi-millionaire, who can easily take care of him without all these controversies surrounding it? And then suddenly, Asake has to come and be defending himself, you know, people, a whole lot of unnecessary noise came. But one thing stands out: the guy didn't make the right choices. Okay? And now he has seen that the choices he didn't make actually turns out to have turned out better for him. In any case, perhaps in the scheme of things, if this man hadn't treated his father, his children and his wife the way he had treated them, maybe someone like Asake would never have a reason. He faced the challenges and overcame them, became rich, you know, became famous, you know, and the father saw that, and now he's having health issues, and the only natural person who will have a natural inclination to help him is his son, who with a wave of the hand can actually mobilize medical care for him beyond his wildest dreams. And then the boy wouldn't do anything, you know. He too was remembering, okay, this is the guy who didn't take care of me when I was a kid. Why is he now coming to me for help? You know, I know people personally a man who really, his wife had 6 children, and throughout the growth of those children, he never once lifted a finger to help them, either in their schooling, in providing for them, or anything like that. You know, and then the mother took that upon herself with her family's support, trained them. All of them are graduates. They are well-to-do now. One of them is a multi-millionaire caterer, and she has all the. And they built a house for their mother. They bought a car for her. She's retired now. She's having the time of her life after all that struggle. And the man suddenly realized that, man, things have changed though. He had to find a way to actually seek for their forgiveness for having ignored them all their growing lives. And because of the way those children were brought up, they forgave him and took care of him too. So now you can.
Are they obligated to even do that if they
are not?
If they had said, I'm not going to listen to you.
It's the way we are brought up. We are brought up to be kind even when we don't want to be, you know, because in our universe, you believe that if you are kind to people, people will be kind to you in return.
It doesn't work that way.
Yes, sometimes it does. You can be kind to people who will be wicked to you, you know, somewhere along the lines. You can be kind to people who will remember that kindness And maybe years later when they see you and they see your condition, they might say, no, 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 this guy did something to me. You just happen to be there at a very pivotal point in their life where you made that contribution without even thinking. And then, you know, so yes, I wouldn't say most old people regret. They reminisce a lot because with nothing to look forward to in terms of they are less active now. So they spend more time on their own, especially people who can move to places and all that. They spend more time on their own. And so that gives them a chance to reflect on their life. And of course, some will say, maybe there's some things I shouldn't have done that I did. But then where does that take you, really? You can't sit there and be crying for choices that you have made and you can't unmake. You know, you just have to move on with life. Thank God that, okay, I've reached this age. I have lived longer than my dad did, you know. And that's one point of gratitude that I have, that, okay, whatever happens to me now, I lived longer than my own father, you know. So, and that's probably even longer than my own mother, you know. So, but that's a sign of modernity and better medical conditions and everything.
Okay, let's now move on to something very dicey, and don't shy away from this.
Okay.
What's your thought on men, men who are in their 50s going after younger girls? Now, I'm asking this because we're talking about coping mechanisms as well, and you see a lot of these older men trying to, you know, go woo a younger girl. You see some of these older men leaving families that they have, you know, to go after younger girls, forgetting that these younger girls will not be the ones to take care of you, bro. At the end of the day, when you're old, it is your wife that you will want her to take care of you, right?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts regarding that? Because we're talking about coping mechanism and then poor life choices.
Well, I can't say because I don't do that.
Glory to God. Glory to God.
But I think it's a realization that they project their own weakness on older women and believe that they can't get the same. I honestly, I'm trying to understand older men's preference for younger women. Or should I flip the script and say maybe it's younger women that prefers older men because of their maturity, and the fact that I've seen some younger women actually saying that older men tend to be more patient with them and more understanding and more open-handed, you know, and so on.
When you say open-handed, how do you mean?
Open-handed. They will take care of their needs. They are more willing to take care of their needs.
Okay.
A young man just growing up, pinching pennies, will say, babe, let's leave this one and all that. I think it works both ways.
But you're going to continue. Do you think that being open-handed is a way of the man trying to get the girl because he knows that she can't possibly be with him because of his looks, he's getting older. She can't possibly be with him because of his stamina because he's getting older. So the only thing that she's probably there with him is because of the finances and the open-handed, as you say.
That's a factor, I will admit. Okay. Most young girls tend to see older, rich men as a source of, what do you call it, sustenance. And those old men too say, okay, if she's willing to give me this, no problem, you know, that kind of thing. You know, so it's a mutual thing. I know some women who don't like older men. And some older men tend to prefer older women because they are less stressful. They have less demands to make of you. They are also more understanding. But I've also seen situations in which older women prefer younger men, you know, because in a nutshell, I would say maybe it reminds you of your younger days, your energy, your vibrancy, and you just want to kind of continue to relate to that. That could be a factor. There are psychological factors. There are just social. There's also the society, the social factor, where older men supposed to take care of younger women and all that. It could also be a demographic factor. There are more women in Nigeria than men, and there are more younger females than older females, demographically speaking, if you look at the statistics. So you are far more likely to see older men gravitating more towards younger women, because there aren't that many older women in any case. In Nigeria, we have just about 4.7 million older women above 60. We have about 5 point something, you know, so they're almost even. So that means there is a greater number of younger women in the population than older women.
So when you say younger men, what age are you looking at?
I'm looking at all ages below 60.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
All ages below 60. And Nigeria, being a youthful population, is far more likely to have more in terms of younger women than older women. And most older women are either married or widowed, you know, so
they don't deserve love,
yeah.
widowed?
No, and then the culture, which actually give men license to play the field, you know, also has, it also is a factor in that kind of arrangement.
Okay, let's now look at our contemporaries, I mean, outside Nigeria, as we get set to wrap up. You see in other climes, you see, aside from the old people home, which you don't really have here in Nigeria, we don't really take care of our senior citizens very well. You see that there are social networks that connect maybe widowers,
singles,
to women, to widows. You see many of these men who probably never got a chance to be in love and get a woman. You
older
see them,
men, older women.
Yes,
you know.
You see this kind of platforms connecting these older men to women of their kind, you know, so they can be, because it's all about companionship. But in Nigeria, we don't see that happening. Do you think that that is something we can explore? Because we see a lot of men who probably, I know a lot of men, once they lose their wife, before you know it, they
married another one.
But there's still a percentage of those who don't, who just maybe life has not been,
companionship.
They need companionship, and they need the female energy. So don't you think that we should have a platform like that, you know, this type of coping mechanism for this man?
We do, largely. If you, a cursory browsing of Facebook, for example, we turn up a lot of pages that are devoted to connecting older men to older women, older men to, you know, divorcees, widows, and stuff like that. I don't know how active they are. I've explored some of it.
Oh,
you know. Yes.
How was your experience on that?
Well, it appears to me that those platforms are largely meant to connect, what do they call it? There's a term they use for it. More like escort services.
Oh, no,
you know,
no.
Mostly, you know, because you can even see from the pictures being posted there that these are just people trying to connect to each other for the purpose of
that means you don't have a standard platform.
So there's no stand. There are. I don't know of any that is actually very, very reputable that you can easily go to. So a lot of people are just taking their chances. I've been to a few with even divided across religion, ethnicity, and all that stuff. You know, Muslim women, Muslim men, and all that. You know, but some of the stuff you see there doesn't suggest seriousness in wanting a real relationship. I haven't bothered to even explore further than to. I agreed. But then older people tend to form a kind of grouping at some point, because believe it or not, if I walk into a room full of young people now, I will feel terribly out of place. You know, first of all, I won't do what they are doing. I will just be looking at them and say, what's wrong with these people? But I will also remember that, oh, I used to be like this. So I would just watch them with this kind of amusement, you know, that kind of thing. But you definitely wouldn't want to be there, you know, and become the butt of their joke. Ah, old man. What do they call them? The senior man.
I mean, but you're a senior man, of course.
Yeah, but you see, it has become a standard in Nigeria's vocabulary. When
Senior
they see
man.
you with white hair, for example, you know, and this kind of a passport.
Senior man Rashid.
Honestly, you don't know how many checkpoints this thing got me past. Just seeing you, and we revere grayness. You know, even if you are 30 years old and you have gray hair, people will think you are older. You know, I drive up to a checkpoint, the guy will look at me, see all the white hair and say, Daddy, good afternoon, sir. Anything for the boys, you know, that kind of thing. You know, even if they want to harass you, and it tells me that our culture is still very, very active in our minds. You know, even if they want to harass you, they will hesitate and say, no, how can I do this to an old man?
Yes.
You know, so being a senior comes with its advantages from a societal point of view. People tend to give you a lot of respect, you know, though most senior citizens don't like it when you call them daddy, especially when they are chasing young women.
But you are daddy now.
Yes,
are you
but
not daddy?
they want to be, that's when they will say, don't call me sir.
Call me Abdul.
Don't call me
You
sir.
are daddy. If you don't like it, go to court.
The young lady may very well be interested in you, but that upbringing cannot make her call you by your name.
Okay.
Because it's seen as a sign of disrespect in our culture to call the elderly by their names. So we call you daddy or zaddy or look for a nickname for you and all that. You know, those kind of things. So it's a funny situation to be in. It's an interesting situation to be in, and believe me, people who don't enjoy their old age, I don't think they got it. People who worry about old age really aren't enjoying their lives, you know, because old age, growing old, is a wonderful thing. You know, because you tend to see life differently, you tend to be calmer when you approach things, you know, and basically in our culture, people tend to give you a lot of respect if you respect yourself, you know. So, and people tend to hang on to your quote-unquote wisdom, you know, because they know you are speaking from a point of view of experience. So there's a lot of privileges that old age confers on people, you know, in our society, even in every society. All right.
Okay, we've had a great conversation. There's one last thing I wanted to ask you, but we don't have much time. But in your final words, as we step off, you know, the show this morning, I mean, what would you say to a man who is watching himself growing old and he's feeling like, I have not achieved anything. I am 49, I'm getting to 50, I'm getting to 55, and it's almost like, what have I done with my life? What would you say to a man like that?
Colonel Sanders set up KFC in his 60s. Where there's life, there's hope.
Anything can still be achieved. Thank you so much, Mr. Rashidi Onionge, for joining us to have this conversation about aging in men and, of course, some coping mechanisms. It's very good for you to join a support group. I would recommend that as well. A support group, maybe it could be in your church, it could be in your place of worship, it could be anywhere. It could be a group of friends, you know, that's if they're not too busy for you. I mean, they're getting retired already, so. But then it's good for you to have good friends, good partnership, and so in that way you can always have somebody to, as a man, to look at. So while your wife has gone for a mugo, you can just be with your friends and just try to, you know, cope as much as possible. I wish we could have more time to talk about this, but maybe subsequently we can have more conversations about, you know, aging in men. It is something we need to be talking about. Not every time shaming a woman for getting old, because you as a man too, you also get old. Life creeps at you, and before you realize it, that woman you were calling Madam 45, you look at yourself and you're like, I'm 52, and you're like, what have you done with yourself? And somebody else would make slight remarks to you and say, oh, look at you, old man. what are you doing with yourself? And so it's very important for us to always be very mindful of how we live our life, knowing that each day that passes by, we are getting old. By the end of today, to be done of 24 hours, and of course, I'm old by 1 day. And he's also old by 1 day.
Yep.
So let me give you that, my high five I give to all my guests. No, high five.
But I'm reversing the aging process. I get younger as I grow older.
Forget that thing.
That's why those young girls are calling me baby.
They're calling you baby. No. That is abuse of power. Thank you so much for having this talk with us. And don't forget that you can join the conversation on our social media platforms on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course, my love, we are on X. This particular conversation, you enjoyed it so much, you want to watch it again, it's definitely going to be on our YouTube channel, Official Rapid TV. We are on all social platforms. And of course, you can move with us anywhere in the world on our website, www.rbnradiotv.com. I'm also on social media platform with the name Cynthia Agbo. I will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. Until then, goodbye.